Hey guys, Abel here. Welcome back to another video. And in this video, I want to talk about genetics. And more specifically, I want to give my 2 cents to this big round of discussion or rounds of discussions that were going on in the industry. Dave Maconi recorded a video about this, which I thought was great. There was this recent roundtable with Alex Leonidas, Alpha Destiny, Jeffrey Verdi Schofield, and then Dave. Jeffrey did his individual video. And then, of course, NH, Natural Hypertrophy, is always talking about how all this talk about genetics is usually from people that have been black-pilled. Basically, their standards have been lowered too much, and that genetics really don't limit you nearly as much as you think. And with enough hard work, you can basically achieve, if not anything, at least a lot more than what you believe you can achieve. So I want to talk about this whole thing. I don't want to spend too much time in this video talking about, how much genetics matter, what my take on that whole thing is. A, because I have done that in the past. B, because I think that all these guys have done a good enough job at that. What I want to do instead in this video is talking about the discussions themselves. Talking about, why people would even want to talk about this in the first place, why the people on the other side are getting annoyed by all of this, and how we can make some peace within this whole mess. So the first thing I want to talk about now is, why do people care about this in the first place? Why do people spend so much time thinking about their genetic potential, comparing themselves with other people, labeling others as freaks or someone with great genetics, instead of just training, putting in the work, being consistent with it all, and then, eventually after 5, but preferably 10 years, seeing what the evidence shows. It's very accepted and politically completely correct these days to ridicule these people and call them lazy, pathetic. Why would you even worry about any of this before actually putting in the work? I mean, it's completely backwards. And I agree with this to an extent, but on the other hand, I think it's completely normal to evaluate before you just put in a crap ton of work into something, whether there's really a point in putting in the work. I think it's way too easy for people like us who have been training for many, many years to look back on our fitness journey and look at our mindsets today and judge other people based on that. Today I have been lifting for about 10 years. Did I get the physique, which I initially hoped that I would get? No, because initially, the movie that inspired me was Pumping Iron. I was hoping that I would look like Arnold Schwarzenegger by the end of it. That didn't happen. On the other hand, over time, this journey became about a lot more for me than about just getting biceps and a chest that is of a certain size. And now at this point, the fact that maybe I didn't get as big as what I had initially hoped for, it doesn't matter because the whole journey was so fulfilling and it was truly just enjoyable, oftentimes therapeutic, and very enriching and fulfilling to go through this whole lifting journey. It's easy for me to look all of this, everything that has happened, all the internal and external transformations that I have gone through, and based on that, look at someone who hasn't even been lifting for a year and is already worrying about whether he or she has good genetics, usually he. But the thing is, I have this mindset today. Probably when I started lifting, I didn't have that mindset. And to be honest, I don't know what my reaction would have been if someone had come to me at the time and told me that, dude, just so you know, without PEDs and probably even with PEDs, you will never ever, most probably unless you're like 1 in 100,000 type of genetic phenom, you will never look like Arnold. Like, just so you know that, okay? There is a good chance that I just wouldn't have started the whole thing because, what's the point? If I cannot get to what my dream is, then why would I put in the effort? Also, I think thinking about the effort and the time investment that's required for something and then what you can actually hope for in return, I think it's completely natural. If I was to pick up an instrument to learn, I would look at, okay, realistically, how long is going to take to get to a recreationally proficient level? How long does it take to learn to play the piano? At least to the level where I can play a song that I like, some pop song, not the most complicated one, but I can play it to myself and then I can sing in the meantime. 5 years. I'm not sure. I just said a number, but I believe learning to play the piano even decently well takes a fair amount of time. Okay, 5 years, that's holy shit, that's quite a bit. How long does it take to learn to play the guitar at the same level? 6 months, maybe. I'm not exactly sure, but it's a fraction of the time. Okay, probably it's more worth it for me to try myself with the guitar. So all this is to say that thinking about the required effort and time to get good at something or to get good results from something is completely reasonable and rational. And I think that's a fundamental aspect of who we are. Even animals do it, right? Like optimal foraging strategy or optimum foraging strategy. Even birds evaluate, is it worth it to fly up that high to drop this nut to crack it open? Or is it going to require more energy than how many calories there are in this nut that I want to eat? It's a very, very natural thing. So I don't want to ridicule anybody for thinking this way, even if you have been training for 3 months and you're freaking out whether or not you have good genetics or at least good enough genetics. I don't want to ridicule you. I understand. It just happens that this kind of mindset and this otherwise completely rational way of thinking is going to get in the way of you pursuing something, lifting, that I think, or I should say I know, is going to be enormously beneficial for you physically, but also mentally. For a lot of you guys, this can be miraculous from a mental health aspect. It can do wonders for your confidence, for just dealing with everyday annoying, hard, sometimes traumatizing things. And then, of course, for your physical health. It can be amazing. So I think everybody should do some form of resistance training, even if they don't like it, even if they are not inspired by it, even if you don't have very eye-inspiring results, because I know that this is going to be so beneficial for almost all of you. I think whatever we can do to prevent you from discouraging yourself, from even starting with it, from even, doing it consistently, I think we should think about how we can achieve that. So your mindset is completely rational. I think it's one of those things where you have to consciously work on putting that mindset aside and to put these self-doubting thoughts away, because they're really, really just going to hinder you more than anything. Now, I also don't want to be too harsh on the people who get annoyed from all this talk about genetics. I also don't want to be too harsh on the people who, I think, label others too easily with being negative and downputting and demotivating and black pill preachers, NH, for example, natural hypertrophy. As you know, I like his channel a lot. I have a lot of respect for him. I think that he throws around these labels a little bit too easily. I think he gets a little bit overly emotional, overly pissy when it comes to the talk about genetics. But I also understand where he's coming from. I can sympathize with him because if you're looking at his own story, according to him, a lot of people told him in the beginning that he will never put on muscle, that he will never amount to anything as far as physique building is concerned. He was skinny, he really didn't seem like he has great potential for all of this. Then he put in a shitload of work. He was very consistent. He did everything that was required. And eventually he built a very, very good physique. And now people seemingly are discrediting all of his hard work. And they're just saying, oh, but you have amazing genetics. I can completely understand that this is irritating. It's like, God damn it, I cannot win with this. Like, at first you're trying to put me down, then I prove you wrong and I put in the work, and now you're discrediting my hard work by just calling me someone with amazing genetics. Yeah, it's kind of unfair in a way, and screw those people. But with that, I also want to give people like NH and other people who get very annoyed when the whole genetics topic comes up a bit of perspective and basically just outline why the message of, well, everybody can achieve X, Y results and people who don't achieve that are just lazy, why this can be frustrating for others. When it comes to people like me, I don't personally get offended by people saying things like this. I don't consider myself someone with poor genetics at all. I'm very happy with my results. So for me, that's not personally insulting. It's just kind of annoying. Like when you believe something to be the case and you're actually very confident in your belief, and then you hear someone else very confidently touting the opposite of that, of course, it can be a little bit frustrating, just annoying. God damn it, I don't agree with this, so I want to speak up. I make my case. I would be one archetype for whom this can be sometimes frustrating. The other archetype is the person who has a pretty poor response to training. Granted, a lot of the people who will say that about themselves, that they have poor genetics, they don't respond well to training, a lot of them just did dumb stuff in the gym and they didn't put in the work. Absolutely. But, this is a big world, lots and lots of different kinds of people with different stories. I think it's just not a stretch to assume that there must be at least some people, maybe quite a lot of them on an absolute scale, maybe on a relative scale, not a lot of people, who really did put in the work and did train intelligently and did do all the things that we tell them to do, and they didn't have a great response. For them, hearing this message that, okay, anybody who didn't get to my level is just lazy or just didn't work hard enough or just did things incorrectly is insulting, basically. It basically comes across as being dismissive of their efforts. Dave Maconi really gave the perfect analogy for this in this recent roundtable that they did with Alpha Destiny or Alex Leonidas and Jeffrey Verity Schofield, that, imagine that you start working at a company and over years of grinding your ass off, you get to a point where you earn $100,000, let's say. And then the boss's son comes to the company and they start with a salary of $200,000. And then the next year they're earning $300,000. And sure, does the guy work hard? Absolutely. But you know it fully well. You see the guy, you know what you did. He's not working any harder than you do. It's just, the circumstances that were just not equal to begin with. And then if that guy goes on a book tour and is talking about how he got to a point where now he's earning $500,000 per year, and it's all his hard work and how he was willing to do all the things that others weren't, like, you're going to be incredibly frustrated and you're going to feel, I don't even know, betrayed or at the very least insulted. It's just not fair. Like, at least don't take away the thing that I have. Do I have your background and your starting circumstances? No. And I can deal with that. I'm willing to put in the work. I'm a proud man or woman. Okay, fine. I understand that life is sometimes not fair. I can only control what I can control, and that is my efforts and hard work. It's fine. But at least don't discredit me for that. Like, I really did put in the work. The fact that you earned, 5 times more in 2 years is not down to how much harder you worked. It's down to circumstances and you being lucky that you picked the right parents. It's also frustrating, and this is something that is even frustrating for me, not insulting per se, it's just annoying to see that most of the time, 99% of the cases, the people who talk about genetics not mattering and how everybody can get to the same level if they just work for long enough, hard enough, 99% of the cases, these are people who had fantastic physiques after like 2 years. The person started training. Maybe they started off skinny, like completely, unmuscled, skinny fat. But, after their first bulking and cutting cycle that they repeated, they already looked phenomenal. And then, 6 years later, of course, they look even better, but it's not such a monumental change compared to what they experienced very, very early on. When a person like this is talking to me about the 10 years or 15 years that they have invested and how amazingly smartly they trained, that's just very disingenuous and annoying, Sure, did you put in 15 years of work? Maybe, but, I'm here after year, 7, let's just say, in one person's case, and I look nothing like you did after 1 year or 2 years. So how was that again about the 15 years? These sorts of incoherent messages and statements, those can just really grind the gears of some people. At this point, I don't really get myself worked up about stuff like this because I don't even really look at content like this. But yeah, that can definitely be annoying. One other thing is, maybe I should have mentioned this in the beginning, but okay, we can understand now maybe a little bit better why people would even think about genetics. Why is this relevant for them? But in a general sense, is it valuable to talk about genetics? Because this is something that I'm often on the fence about. Like, should we discuss what you can and cannot achieve? Because ultimately it does have the potential to discourage you from something. And the thing is, we can, of course, come up with scenarios in which that's true. Someone could have achieved something great, but they got discouraged, so they didn't even try. Or someone was completely delusional, and then they tried something, and then they had phenomenal results. but maybe not as phenomenal as what they had expected in the beginning. But by the time they realize that, okay, that's not quite realistic, they have fallen in love with the process and they have amazing things to show for now. So we can come up with, examples for any kind of thing that we want to make a case for. But in a general sense, why is it valuable to talk about genetics? And for me, the answer is basically the same thing as why it can be potentially be valuable to talk about steroids and who is using it and who isn't using it. Because it's valuable for you to know that, these physiques, like those have not been forged under the same circumstances as what you're intending on having. Okay, so this person used substances that you're not intending on using. So just keep that in mind when you're aspiring to look like that person. It might still happen, but if it doesn't mean that you're a failure or that you were lazy or didn't work correctly. It's, not equal support system. Let's just put it that way. Take, some person that is either openly on drugs or you would swear on your life and your parents' life that he's on drugs, so he's a fake natty. Take that person and just imagine an alternate universe in which that person is truly natural and is just the biggest freak on the planet. For that person, they will have results that pretty much nobody else can expect to have, almost nobody. If that person starts a YouTube channel or Instagram page and is showing you exercises and lifting strategies that worked for him, and he's just going off of his own experience, like that's going to be just super, super misleading and just worthless for anybody else. But people are still gonna be drawn to it because the person looks amazing and inspiring. So for me, someone who is just a genetic phenom and someone who is juiced up, as far as the consumers are concerned, as far as you're concerned, watching or reading their material, it's basically one and the same. And my point here is not that, okay, so if you're judging PD users, then also judge those with great genetics. No, but this is why it can be valuable to actually talk about genetics and to acknowledge when someone has amazing genetics, because we do the same things. People copy Arnold's arm routine. How can I have a biceps like Arnold did? And then they look at their exercise and stuff, and some people will be shocked that they did all the concentration curls to train the peak of the biceps and their arms don't look like it. Then someone will come along and tell them that, hey, just so you know, like Arnold was on like 2 grams of gear per week. So, kind of a different situation. The same thing goes when someone just has amazing biceps because they have phenomenal genetics. You should also be aware of that so you don't beat yourself up, so that you can kind of ease your frustration a little bit. Just as much as, overemphasizing the role of genetics can be counterproductive, sometimes it might just be what a person needs. Now, once again, I completely understand the perspective of the people that get annoyed by all this genetics talk, and when they say things like it's just a pathetic excuse to talk about my great genetics and why you don't have my results, often it might actually be just an excuse and just, a cop-out. They just really don't want to put in the work. Sure, there are people like that. However, I would also offer just, the thought experiment to some of these guys is, at what point does it become a cop-out for me to keep pointing out things that you could still be doing better for you to have, let's say, my results or someone else's results? If you're telling me that, okay, so I have been training now for 5 years and, I'm eating a high protein diet and I'm sleeping 8 hours a night and I'm in the gym, let's say 5 days a week, at that point, is it fair for me to say that, well, it really takes 6 days a week, not 5? Are you doing 14 sets per muscle group and you're progressing, like you're gradually overloading your training? Well, probably it takes 18 sets for you. Are you sleeping 8 hours a night? No, it takes 9. At what point is it a cop-out? And at what point am I just beating around the bush? And I should just look the person in the eye and say, well, look, like you might actually not have the greatest genetics for this. Okay. It's not the end of the conversation. I would try to give a bunch more insight to this person. But at a certain point, you kind of just got to face reality. Now, some people might come back to this and say, well, the reality is that most people, if they truly did all those things that I said in this example, so sleeping, eating, training enough, lifting for long enough, of course, then they would have good results. But the thing is, This is something that I think a lot of people just have no way of knowing about if they haven't actually worked with people. And this is something that I can talk about honestly in my case, because I had all kinds of romantic ideas before I started to have a large enough client load to where I was even exposed to certain types of people. Just like everybody else, I was looking at my own experience and then maybe the experience of some of those people that I'm in contact with within the fitness world and those few clients that I had before that. It's not a large sample. So, what was my experience? I started lifting. I started to have results. Nothing crazy, but yeah, I definitely looked like someone who is at least moving his body, even in my first year. I could bench press 80 kilos for like 4 or 5 reps at least in my first year. I didn't have huge biceps, but if I flexed them, I did look like someone who lifted, little things like this. I didn't have a bunch of very specific things that I expected from others based on my own experience. Sorry, my cat is just rearranging her litter. But I was still looking at my own experience. I was using that as the anchoring point, basically. And then, as I started to work together with more and more people, I could just have a much larger exposure to the huge variety of responses that you can have with training. I have had people where initially maybe I looked at their physique and I was like, okay, so like this guy's clearly a beginner. There's a lot more in the tank for them. And then they were like, oh, no. So when I said lifting for 6 months, I just mean after starting again, because I had 2 weeks of break, like this is already like, 12 kilos of muscle away from my starting point. Because I looked like some death camp prisoner victim. And, then you're looking at the person and you kind of start scratching your head like, okay, so is this guy really a beginner? I was thinking of my own experience and thinking of the fact initially that, okay, like after maybe 2 years, I was benching, like 4 or 5 reps with 80 kilos. So yeah, I mean, and I'm pretty much average. Like I'm not like a super hard gainer, but I'm also not like like a Jared Feather who looked like a super fitness model dude after like 6 months of lifting. So yeah, about average. And then I came across people who, after 2 years of lifting and already after having made some significant progress, like I've seen some before photos of them, they're still benching, like 65 kilos for 5 reps. And it's like, oh, wow. Okay. And, just in a general sense, you work together with people and it's very, very easy to observe the differences between people. For some people, let's just take the bench press as a completely random example. It could be anything else. It could be muscularity. It could be another lift, whatever. For some people, the journey goes something like, okay, 65 kilos, 70 kilos, 75 kilos, 80 kilos, very linear, basically no significant plateaus. When they get to 85 kilos, things slow down. Now we need to get a bit smarter with things. For some other people, when things slow down and we need to get smarter, that happens at, 70 kilos. And, it's just the way it is. For some other people, it might be even more impressive than for the 85 kilo guy. And the same thing is happening with the physique building game. All of us, pretty much all of us, when we start lifting, the initial months are very exciting. Like you see changes on your body. Like sometimes it feels like your arms are growing like day to day, pretty much. And, there comes a point where the changes are visually not obvious. Now you need to wait like 6 months. Now you need to wait 2 years before you see some significant change. For some people, by the time things really slow down, I mean, they have a phenomenal physique. For some other people, they still pretty much don't look like they lift. And I think, obviously it's very hard to objectively tell what good genetics are, what average genetics are, but it's especially hard when realistically you never really had a large enough sample size to look at. I probably didn't have a large enough sample size to look at either, but it's much, much larger now than it was when, I only had my own case study, some public figures I was following, and a couple of friends and acquaintances that I know that were also lifting. And a lot of these people, that are very, very optimistic regarding what you can achieve genetically and are very dismissive of the whole genetics conversation, a lot of them don't coach. Maybe they have coached initially, but now they just transition to just selling books and things like that. They're a little bit detached, Okay, slight shift in the camera angle and everything, but let's continue. I'm not at all saying that if you're not coaching people, then you have no say in the matter. And, people like me who coach, like we get to talk, not at all. I'm just saying that if there is no way to actually hold you accountable for your claims, then it's much easier to make very bold and rosy promises. I can't afford to do that because if I don't deliver on my promises, then I will be the one sitting there looking the person in the eye, having to explain myself why it was not even close. Like not even close, So it always reminds me of this joke where the person goes into the store and says, hey, so you're selling apples. The store next to you also sells apples, but yours are twice as expensive. And then the seller says, okay, then you go to the other store and buy it there. I was like, well, but that one's close. It's like, well, when ours is closed, like we cost only half this much as well. So I feel like kind of the same thing is going on here. Coaching people and helping them for money and not just giving free information is not just about, being some person who is trying to rip others off. It's not about selling something that should be free. Yes, of course, it should be free. Everybody can find all of this out for free. It's all there on the internet. But it's also a means of giving people the tools to actually hold you accountable. So lastly, just to finish kind of on a practical note, what should we do with all of this? Because I'm open to the possibility that, look, let's just tell people that they can achieve anything, even potentially results that I don't think are realistic, because that's going to get their foot through the door. It's going to make them at least work hard and try. And, some people might get disappointed, but a lot of people will actually at least do it. And then, like I did, they will fall in love with the process, realize that lifting is great, whether or not you will end up looking like whoever that you aspire to look like. And it's going to create this net positive effect. For one, that's problematic because I guess lying is just not great. And in many cases, it will probably not work out like that. And some people will not fall in love with the process, but they will be bitterly disappointed. So then they will not like you so much. Secondly, I just don't feel like this is necessary. I don't think that we need to treat people as children. I think we can be just honest, whatever you believe to be the honest answer. If NH believes that, the amount of muscle mass that the average person can achieve is, 10 kilograms higher than what I believe to be the case, then that's what he should talk about. That's completely okay. Maybe then we can have a roundtable on what realistic standards are. Not sure if that's beneficial, but, I think that we can just tell people how it is and then also point out with that listen, put in the work, like try lifting. Probably you should do that anyway because it's just good for you, and at least give yourself the chance to find out whether you actually have anything to lament about. Maybe you have actually great genetics, but you're never going to find it out if you don't even try. I think that perspective is just as good as any other, honestly. That's what I tell all my clients. When they are asking me about, what do I think I can achieve? Do you think this is realistic? I never want to lie to them because I don't want to be the person who misled them back in the day if things don't really go how I promised they would go. I tell them that, listen, these are averages, these are normal distributions. You don't really know what you can achieve. You might have a unique response to things where things need to be tweaked quite a bit more than for the average person to get your best response. It could be that you're a slower burner. It could be that for you, it's not the case that, okay, first year you put on 10 kilos, second year 5 kilos, third year 3 kilos. There you have it. There's your 22 kilos of muscle. Maybe for you, it's more like, 5, 5, 4, 4, 3, 3, 3, but you will end up in the same place. You never know. And I would just recommend that you don't think about it because, listen, you're going to be a much, much better version of yourself if you just stick to this. That's what I'm telling them. And so far, honestly, I can count it on one hand. Maybe actually on one finger, the amount of times this has not worked because the person just got even more bitter from this answer. So I think we can just have honest, adult-like conversations with people and we don't need to paint rosy pictures. For some people who might be a little bit detached, my goodness, my cat is dismantling the apartment in the meantime, so I will have to wrap this up really quickly. For some people who might be a little bit detached and might be delusional about what the average person can achieve on their own way. It's just they happen to be on the good side of all of this because they have already achieved these things. Maybe they are detached for different reasons. Maybe they started using drugs too early and they never actually gained the right perspective on how it feels like to be really, really plateaued. For these people, I would just say, just do some more groundwork, maybe look around a bit more, maybe listen more to what people are telling you. Don't just dismiss everybody because of your own experience and just dismiss them as lazy or stupid. Because I think there are things that you missed out on, experiences that you missed out on, and knowledge you missed out on. And yep, I think that's more or less what I wanted to say on the topic. I also kind of wanted to talk about, nihilism, the nihilistic mindset of certain lifters, and the opposite of that, which is I'm going to be the most hardcore lifter on the planet. Like the contrast between these two, like which one is better, is the sweet spot in between those two, whether that's the best. But I think I'm going to leave that for another video. For today, though, I want to thank you for your attention. I am working like crazy now, like seriously on the finishing touches on this book. Maybe not finishing touches. I rewrote a bunch of chapters, to be honest, and that's why it's taking me longer. But my training book is, it's going to happen, man. I'm honestly so happy that I'm actually going to release a book. This was one of my dreams from the first day since I started like YouTubing and podcasting. I always wanted to do it. And I'm just honestly, like, I don't even care if nobody buys it. I'm just happy that I will be able to say like, yeah, I wrote a book. So yeah, but regardless, please subscribe for more content like this. Like the video if you liked it. Leave a comment, please, to support this channel and to just express your opinions. And if you're interested in working together with me in any way, then please check out the show description for links. And I'm going to finish with this. And once again, I will let you to guess the number, which I can tell you because it's 39 centimeters.